Knowing this near universal pattern helps to assess new brands and existing ones.
What don't marketers know?
Quite a lot. Marketers largely live in an anything-goes world where the latest fashion or fad drives an awful lot of practice.
Segmentation is the recognition you can't serve everyone with equal satisfaction.
This is the Zach Ansbury Show.
Welcome. On today's podcast clip, we have Associate Professor Benedetta Crisafulli from Birkbeck, University of London, United Kingdom. You then moved on to do a PhD in services marketing. So with two different researchers that I know quite well, which is great.
Yeah.
Jaywant Singh and Francesca Dello Riley. What was your topic there?
It started when I did my first master degree. I ended up doing a dissertation that was looking into service recovery. It was very high level. I didn't go into much depth, but that kind of set the scene for what was coming next, because I had decided that was an area where I think I could do a good job, and it was interesting. It was there was a body of work building up in the service community. I ended up going to conferences in services, so I kind of got to know people in the community. It's a small community, but very close-knit and very open also to listening to PhDs and giving feedback, etc. So I ended up doing my dissertation in that domain, and my particular focus was on looking into how service guarantees that some companies used, some of them have got 100% satisfaction guarantee. How are those policies designed and how are they implemented when it comes to people having negative experiences with the actual delivery of the service? So it's an area, I eventually published out of PhD. I published a paper, and very recently in 2023, it was, there was a number of service scholars came together to write an encyclopedia of services by ELGA. And I wrote a chapter on service guarantee. So it's a niche area within the service domain, but it builds also on service recovery literature. Yeah.
And did that sort of stem from that time that you spent during the Masters of Science? Because you said some of that involved literature.
During the Master of Science, I ended up doing a systematic review of the literature out of, based in the dissertation. And then that kind of allowed me to set the scope, define the questions, and then move forward.
Cool. That sounds really useful, actually, then.
Especially if you have funding, you got to be very careful about timing. So you might as well use that dissertation as a start of a 10. Maybe you get to change it slightly when you start PhD, but still you have a sense of where you're going. It's not going to be exactly where you're going, but I think it sounds
so very useful. So at the University of South Australia, so we don't have an honours program anymore. I was the for masters for marketing anyway. So I was the second to last cohort to go through, and it was an 8-month program, and the first 4 months was coursework. And one of the courseworks was about, getting to know the literature in a specific domain. And my supervisor at the time was really heavily researching segmentation. So, I got really involved in that literature. And at the time, I was kind of begrudgingly doing it because I knew it wasn't going to be what my this topic was, which was the second 4 months, which is all to do with duplication of purchase. And so, trotted on. And it ended up being incredibly useful because I've published 4 or 5 papers now that have used that literature and that method. And so, 4 months, I hated doing this, right? I didn't see the point of it. Wasn't sure what I was doing.
Yeah.
And, in hindsight, it was incredibly valuable. So
when you see the tangible outcome out of it, then,
Yeah, exactly. So I agree with you that that time's super valuable. So we don't do that program anymore, but we've kind of replaced it with, we give our incoming masters by research students like bridging scholarships, and those that a little bit of time is to allow them the ability to get that background into that literature, to get that head start before they're officially enrolled, and that sort of countdown clock to their proposal starts. Which I, as a supervisor, I used to find as a student, but even as a supervisor, I find that countdown in the proposal stage and getting the topic and the candidate across the line, the most stressful part of the candidature. Getting them finished, don't worry about that. I'm not super worried about that, but getting them to
It's the first part.
I find that harder. Like, I don't know. Do you agree, or do you think that's the easy?
Yes, I definitely agree. I definitely agree because it is tough. I mean, we have gone through that, and we didn't know. I mean, I remember when I wrote my very first dissertation in the postgraduate program, first time studying in the UK. I kind of got an idea, but I don't want to read that ever again because I'm sure I'm going to find so many holes in that.
Yeah.
And it's really tough. And once you get into PhD and everybody keeps talking, oh, you need to have a theoretical contribution, you need to have something that is managerially relevant, but also, in principle, those things are can be understood by everybody, but in practice, what it actually means when you're thinking about your method and when you're thinking about the practicalities of data gathering and analysis and what it means in terms of making a contribution, it's really tough. And unless you are given the support to be able to go through that process and learn that process, is tough. And a lot in the absence of training, then a lot of the bearing is on the supervisor, and the supervisors just don't have the space and time and capacity to be able to explain to that level to that extent. Yeah. So it's almost like you are assuming that somebody is kind of coming as a ready meal, they know already what to do, but a lot of those things need to be learned in the process. So
I was chatting to a colleague at the University of New South Wales, and I think they have a similar thing upon entering their PhD system as well, that there is a 1 year sort of training, and he really loves it because they can see the grades and stuff like that and how they perform, that they know that their students are coming in with a base level of skill. So, they can run an analysis. They do know how to collect data. They know how to examine literature for quality, those sorts of things. And undoubtedly those skills grow, and I still think every day my skill grows. But I guess for them, it's like a comfort level of right at the beginning that there's at least a baseline of competence.
Yes, and you get to you're right. You get to have a sense of how somebody is performing because all the training gets assessed with coursework and. But also, or exams, but also at the end, you get to screen. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't be giving opportunities to as many people that want to do PhD as possible. But the reality here is that you want to avoid dropouts later on. So if somebody is not necessarily, it's almost like doing medical training. If somebody wants to work badly in hospital, but then you put him in a hospital setting and they're just not able to, then you got to be able to advise people on alternative paths. And so if PhD doesn't have to be for everybody. And, it's a useful way to say, okay, is there more training needed, or is that training enough? I can progress this person into, especially if there is funding, when I started PhD, I got studentship, and when you have studentship, you have reviews, and you got to keep, your time management. You got to be on top of things because by the end of the third year, you're not going to get any more funding. You are on your own, and the university will ask you to pay for it, and there is no room for extensions and things like that. So.
Metrics go down as well, which they don't like.
Yes, absolutely. And that's also part of it's very, with REF, we are looking at completions. completion rates.
Timely completion.
Yeah, timely completions. Yeah.
Yeah, I almost think sometimes it's kind to be cruel, I think is the saying, right? So some people who finish masters by research here, and some of them have been like previous candidates of mine, wonderful people, and usually do very, very good job at an undergraduate level, like a coursework level, right? Here's some content, basically memorize it and then apply it to situations is kind of what an undergraduate and postgraduate degree is like. But is sometimes that next level to, okay, we don't actually know the answer now. That's what research is about. Right? We know this and we know that and we know how to get to the next answer. And your job is to figure out how we can get there based on previous knowledge. And, it's a whole new level and way of thinking. And so some people, the way that everyone's brain thinks, I think is slightly different. So I think you're spot on when you said, I don't think a PhD is for everyone. And I just think some people are somewhat built different. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff I can't do, and I'm quite happy to admit I can't do it. This so happens to be something that I'm okay at. So I'll keep leaning into this. But
that's true, like everybody else. Yeah.
Yes. Kind of advice, like, hey, like I know you kind of want to stay for a PhD, but I'm not sure this is where you'll thrive. Your best bet is to not suffer for 3 years through a PhD and regret undertaking it, and to actually go out there into industry where I know you can be a superstar. So that's what I yeah.
Absolutely. But I think in the way you are managing at the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute is very much in line with that, no?
Yeah. We're quite happy. I think our carryover rate from masters to PhD is not super high. I think it's about maybe 20%, just as a rule of thumb, I think, in my head.
Yeah.
And usually, it's that marrying of people who want to stay versus also think that they're really, really suitable candidates. Because quite often, if you do a PhD with us, you end up becoming faculty. Yeah. And so I guess we're assessing you after knowing you quite often for about 3 or 4 years as to whether that's a good fit for us and ultimately a good fit for them as well. So I think that's generally where the call gets made.
And I think I think it's a process that works, to be honest. It's when I was there, I was quite impressed with the way it is organized because I don't know, there is a tendency, some institutions are kind of bound to what they have always done. I think you have a lot of flexibility with that model in terms of being able to really help individuals to have a sense of what could be to be working for the institute, but at the same time, be honest in deciding, okay, this is not the academic part, is not really my thing. So I can go into working in private sector and
they can like quite easily convert those skills because we do work with industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, they don't get pigeonholed as academics in that sense either, which is kind of nice. Yeah, it's a wonderful system. I mean, the original crux of it is obviously the brainchild of Byron. Byron Sharp, who's done an amazing job building this research center. So I think we've hit $20 million annual revenue generation, which is astonishing, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, he should be incredibly proud of that. And we're going through a merger, so we'll be part of an even bigger, more globally famous university. So hopefully, leverage off that as well. But they have a massive, really well thought pipeline of great candidates. And I've been here for too long. You can see the gray hairs now. But still at my level, we definitely benefit from this system in that sense. Like we usually get, I'm part of the training and mentoring of the really young people, that's for sure. But we do then benefit from getting better quality masters and PhD students coming through. They're known quantities and they're aligned to the institute way of thinking, I suppose. So you don't have anything like that to try to recruit students currently where you're at?
There is a PhD program in place, and applicants, that the process is quite traditional in the sense that we don't admit any PhD students who haven't had any contract other than minimum requirements in terms of degree and grades, etc. You don't admit any new PhD students who haven't had at least an attempt at contacting a potential supervisor, having, presenting their proposal, having an attempt at amending it, etc. And supervisors who have been in touch with these applicants have already confirmed, okay, this could be a potential candidate. Then you go into an interview stage. And then if they get admitted into the program, then they do training. And at that point, you should be able to flag whether something is really, someone is a very strong candidate to be able to pursue PhD after. Or if not, then I think the attempt is to either try to support the students into be ready for the next step, or somehow encourage them to think about, what next. It's not as structured as, black and white as I think it is at your center. Because in a way, the training could be, you could be doing okay with training and then still be keen and willing and engaged and motivated. And so you as a supervisor are kind of in two minds, what am I supposed to do here? So it's not as black and white. There is a little bit of a gray area, I would say. And once you are in the PhD program, but the reality here is that once you are in the PhD program, it's very difficult to, unless the student decides to drop out, becomes a little bit tricky to say, well, I'm going to fail your annual review. I mean, if you keep failing annual review, then obviously the processes of the institution kicks in. You can't keep failing the annual review. But at the same time, it begs the question of, is the student getting the right level of support? Yeah. So, is he getting the right supervisory team? And so there are a number of unknown areas, and one could argue, the student might argue, well, I don't have the right supervisor, so you've got to change my supervisory team. So it becomes tricky, whereas I think there is a clear path in the way it works at Ehrenberg-Bass Institute.
Yeah, and that definitely happens where students there's just a, I don't know, maybe clash of personalities or work styles, and
it is tough.
We're all human. We all have a different way about us. We all try to get along with people, I think, but then sometimes, maybe you perceive the world a little bit differently or something. Who knows? I think so. I don't know about you, but I kind of enjoy supervising. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort to do well, but it's so rewarding when you get it right. And it really does benefit someone else's life. I think there's very few opportunities we can influence someone's life that dramatically, especially if you're not their parents or family and stuff, right? But I think this is an opportunity to actually do that, to transfer skills and the ability to not only learn knowledge, but to create their own knowledge, I think is pretty special. Hi everyone, Zach here again, and just a few quick reminders before you go. If you're listening to the podcast and are considering incorporating it into your secondary school or university courses, then please let me know and I can guide you through the process. If you're enjoying the show and getting some insights from it, then please leave me a 5-star review on your podcast listening platform. It would go a long way to spreading the word. If you know someone who would benefit from this content, then I would be thrilled if you could consider sharing this episode and its knowledge with them. And finally, thank you for becoming part of the community for this show.